I just got back from my very first backpacking trip of the season, and I thought, what better time than now when I'm unpacking everything and going over what I brought, what I used, and what I didn't, than to show you all what is in my 2025 summer backpacking kit. Now, I'm gonna try my best to do this in one take. We're gonna unpack this in real time. I'm gonna talk about the gear that I brought, the gear that I brought but I didn't use, what I'm gonna be changing over the next couple of trips, and lessons learned based on gear that I've had for years. First things first, this is the Gossamer G420. It is their, I believe, 40-liter ultralight pack, which I have used and loved over thousands of miles. It's the pack that I had with me on the Colorado Trail. I've used it to travel internationally as just like a carry-on, and I used it when I went backpacking in Patagonia a few years ago. This roll top serves as a great way to expand your capacity as well, so obviously I did not use the full capacity on this trip. It was just a one-nighter, but if I needed the extra space, when I need the extra space later this year, it'll serve great for that. Attached to this roll top, I have a hat, tick safety, of course, also sun. Up here in Colorado, it gets really intense, so I always pack a hat. And then right in the front here, you'll notice that I have this tag. Now, I was already wearing my Garmin, and I don't love having a million things on my wrist, but my mom got me this really awesome road ID band that has my emergency information, contact, name, etc. on it. Even though I carry an InReach, which we'll get into later, because this is a great way for someone or emergency services to immediately identify me should something happen, especially because I'm out there alone. That was just holding together my front zipper, which in there I have a little DIY first aid kit. I'm not gonna go over everything that's in here now, but I can definitely make a separate video on that if you guys are all interested. But it just has things that I have come to find work really well for me in most situations. Not major emergencies, of course, but everyday average stuff. I also have my Sea to Summit titanium spork. I really love this because it prevents me from having to dig through stuff and get my hands all messy. It's super lightweight and it fits perfectly in this pocket. I also keep my MSR pocket rocket stove attachment here. My fuel is stored separately, but again, just a small item, easily fits there. I typically don't need this until I get to camp because a lot of times I only cook breakfast and or dinner. So for lunchtime, this will just stay out there. I also have my toiletries or bathroom kit. So this consists of three things. One, wipes and TP. I found that a combination of the two is best for most situations. I have an additional trash bag in here because especially if you're using wipes, but honestly these days I just pack everything out. I'll carry a trash bag so I can put everything back in there. And then this is a trowel, which is not gross. I know some people are gonna look at this and go, why are you touching that? But this should never touch the dirty, messy, unhygienic stuff. This is simply to dig the soil and bury things at least 6 inches deep if you're able to bury it there, wherever you go. All right. I also have this Buck pocket knife. This is mainly just for cutting things like salami or cheese at camp. I did not bring either of those things on this trip, but I did bring this regardless because if I needed to cut something out of my first aid kit, make some smaller strips, or cut paracord, this is what I would use. I found that a multi-tool can be nice, but it's honestly really heavy. And since I don't have anything in here that has screws or attachments to it, I don't need most of what comes in a Leatherman or a multi-tool. So this knife really does the trick for, I'd say, every situation that I've ever found myself in, but most situations out there as well. Last but not least, my car key. I don't typically keep this on an outside pocket. If I know that it's gonna rain, this will go inside of my bag, but I had a really hot, dry weather trip, so it's just stored right on the outside. Okay, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sit this long on the hard floor. On the outside, this is kind of gross because I still have not cleaned it out, but this is my cooking setup, the rest of it at least. This here is the just MSR isopropane screw-on, which goes with my pocket rocket, and this is my full camp stove. And then in here, I'm not gonna take it out, but I have a bandana and my titanium mug. Super lightweight, super basic. I don't even know the brand of this one, but I think it's about $20 at REI. The bandana is for a variety of things. Typically on trips like this, if I'm coming across water, I will use the bandana to like wipe off my feet afterwards, wash my face at night. But for this trip, as we'll get to in a few minutes, I cooked a pretty messy meal and I actually used the bandana to help clean out the pot afterwards so that way it wasn't quite as difficult to get clean when I got home. Also in this outside pocket, this looks really gross, it's been in there for a full day now, is my food trash bag. Now, I will typically store this in my bag during the day, not on this outside, but since I just finished my trip and I had some extra waste on my way out from snacks, I just popped this on the outside so I can fill it with all my food waste afterwards. I didn't always bring a separate trash bag. A lot of times I would just bring my food bag, and that ended up getting really messy really fast. I found out because all of my trash, including like goos and gels, things, crumbs, would go straight back into the food bag that I was still like actively pulling from. And it just made all of the food kind of gross. So having a separate gallon bag for trash has been a game changer, and I highly recommend it if you guys have not tried it yourself. Okay, that's everything on that pocket. On this side, I have my Be Free from Katadyn. This is the water filter that I choose to use. I have a second one that I can bring if I need extra capacity or if it's a super long trip and I'm nervous about this filter. But I will say that over the Sawyer, this is definitely my preference. I religiously used a Sawyer in the past. It was great while I had it, but I found that the bags tended to break a lot and were much more difficult to fill up than the Be Free. And the flow rate of the Be Free is much faster, which is my preference as well, but use whatever works for you. Okay, on this side, we have my tent. This is the Gossamer Gear 2. I don't know that I'll be bringing this tent again unless I have Tara or my partner with me, just because it is a palace, and that's really nice, but it's just more space and more bulk than I need. I actually have the one behind me, and you can see how much smaller and more compact this is. So when it comes to bikepacking trips, backpacking trips that I'm solo with, I will probably swap out for the one, but I brought the two on this trip. Okay, and I just realized I forgot something, of course. Let me run and go get that really quick. Okay, turns out I'd actually forgotten 3 things, so thank you for that short break. The first thing are these sandals from Zero. They are kind of like potato chips in how thin they are. Minimalist sandal, they don't have a toe strap, so I can fit my whole foot through the end, wear socks at night, and it's not a luxury item that I used to or usually bring. But I will say that after this trip, being as short as it was and providing as much relief as they did from being in my shoes all day, I definitely think bike or hike, these will be coming with me on every single trip this year. I feel like I talk so fast in these things that I start to get out of breath. I need to calm down. The second thing that I bring feels very wasteful, even as someone who's done this only a handful of times, because I will use, reuse, and continue to use these bottles. But my water storage preference is to get Life or Smart water bottles. They are 1 liter in size, and this was the first trip I used this one on. It's the first bottle of the season. Normally, I will go ahead and mark levels as well on here so that I know 1 cup, 2 cup, 3 full. And that allows me to better measure water that's gonna go into things like my pot. It allows me to monitor my hydration a little bit more, and it weighs basically nothing. I, in the past, had brought something more like this Nalgene, and that's great. It's also fairly lightweight, but it's pretty bulky in size, and I find that having something a little bit taller and skinnier, and that I won't cry if I lose, because come on, stickers are like the most fun part of these bottles, is always my preference. So, Life water bottle for me. Okay, and then the last bit of my tent are actually these poles. These are from Gossamer Gear as well. They're carbon fiber and cork. These were gifted. Thank you, Gossamer Gear. Really appreciate it. And this was the first hiking trip that I've actually taken them on. They were incredible, incredibly lightweight, incredibly sturdy, and very simple to use. These two just articulate and twist together. Like I said, sturdy, but you can see it slowly starts to collapse. And then at night, I go ahead and just extend these to 111 for myself, twist it shut, and they're super sturdy. I actually also used these poles splitboarding earlier this year, so multi-purpose for sure, and highly recommend. They're incredibly lightweight and comfortable. All right, what else do we have on the outside? Oh, sunglasses. These are just some simple ones from Sunski, nothing special. Highly recommend getting a cheap pair of sunglasses. I have lost, smashed, or otherwise damaged sunglasses before, and you just don't want to bring an expensive pair out there, in my opinion, unless you're super, super gentle on your stuff, which I am not. I also, on the front here, have a little phone pouch. This extra seemed pretty unnecessary to me at first, but it is so convenient, not only to keep my phone here and out of the way, but I'm also someone who does not like to bring headphones. I lose them, I break them, I step on them, they get damaged. This, when I'm by myself, I can, at a low volume, put my phone speaker side up in this pocket and listen to a little bit of music or a podcast on the trail. All right, let's talk hip pockets. So on the front here, like I said, I just got back from my trip, so you guys are seeing all the remnants. This turned into my trash center. I still have one packet of Scratch electrolytes, some Nerds gummy clusters, an old bar wrapper, and an electrolyte thing. But during the day, this left-hand side pocket is my snack pouch, and it's also where I put all the trash as I go through it. This right side is for my InReach. So this is my SOS device. I'm also working with Garmin this year, so thank you, Garmin, for the InReach. But even if I'd paid full price for this, I would do it in a heartbeat. The Garmin InReach has been an awesome addition to my kit. In the past, I have used other brands that worked just fine, but I find that the battery life on this, as well as the features to be able to voice and like video or photo text, are really irreplaceable. It's super nice to be able to stay in contact with friends and family. It's also great, obviously, in case of an emergency, to have a very simple SOS device button, to be able to activate it on my phone, and to be able to review my trip as well if I'm using live tracking. So not sponsored in this video, but I do highly recommend the new InReach Messenger Plus. All right, almost done. Out here, we have the Peak Design camera clip. You guys are currently on my camera, but that lives here. This camera clip, if you're into video and photo on trail, is irreplaceable. I don't know what I would do without it. Again, another thing that I've brought to a bunch of countries on this pack, on thousands of miles of trail, and it has never failed me. I've even run with my camera clipped in here, holding it so it's not jostling so much, but like this clip part never failed. Little quick release button right here, and it allows me to bring my massive, very fancy, very lovely, I don't want it to drop or break camera without a worry. All right, I know you're probably thinking I'm done talking about this pack, but not yet, because something else I quote unquote bring is this back pad, which also doubles as a sit pad. I use this thing all of the time. When I first got this pack a few years back, didn't know that I would, actually didn't even know that it like came with this feature, but it's a great way, instead of having to carry like one of those Nemo switchback pads, to integrate both comfort into your backpack and comfort at camp. Okay, now we are done with the pack itself, so let's talk about what's inside. Another coffee break. Been making honey lattes at home lately, and they just slap every time. All right, let's talk food. So I do still have a little bit of food in here, which we'll get into in a second, but first let's talk about the package. I was not traveling in a high bear activity area. So when I talk about my food storage, this is what I'm doing for the areas that I go to. I do own a bear canister and I use it when I need it. This trip was not one of those times. So I am most worried when I'm on trips like this about critters. Critters love to chew through things. This bag is technically bear proof, supposedly. Thankfully, I've never had to test that. It's made of a Kevlar exterior, and then it has these little ties, which I will generally lasso around and then tie onto themselves and then tie up into a tree when I get to camp. Because I don't want little mice or rodents that are scurrying on the ground to get into it, not only for my food purposes, but also just like as a health hazard. And for this trip, I just packed one simple Ziploc bag of my stuff. If you're really worried about smells, you can also get like smell or scent-proof bags to put in there. I've done that in the past. The bags typically tend to break after a few trips though, which feels wasteful to me. And again, I'm not traveling in super active wildlife areas, so I found that this setup, plastic bag, Kevlar Ursack, work really well for me. Of this trip, I still have a packet of hot cocoa, some decaf coffee, because if you guys have not done like a mocha at night, it always hits so hard. So decaf coffee and hot cocoa for a midnight mocha that I turned out not having. I'm not into diet culture, but Crystal Light, the peach iced tea flavor, if I'm like really struggling to drink water, this is sometimes all that can get me to do it. And it does have a tiny bit of caffeine, which can be nice out on trail, but I ended up not needing it. this bag of what looks like dog food that I'm gonna touch on in a second. A couple of dates for some quick energy. This is usually a backup snack for me because dried fruit tends to hold up so well on trail that I will leave it in case, I need extra food at the end. I know that I can leave this in my pack and it's not gonna spoil or go bad like other food will. And this is something new that I was planning on trying out but opted out of because I just felt like I had enough real food. But this is like a protein/carb mix that you can use for trail running, activities, hiking, and it seems like a really great alternative, again, to food if I'm not stopping, if I'm not feeling hungry, but I know that I need calories. I think that this baggie, it was 2 servings, which means this is 400 calories of food, which when you're looking at it, that's like 2 water bottles and 400 calories is a pretty great way to get some food and hydration in at the same time. All right, on to the not dog food looking bag. I could tell you all what it is just off the bat, but there's no fun in that. So instead, we're gonna take a break and take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video and get into exactly what happened here and how it turned out. I've been using Bluei power systems and stations for years now, whether I was full-time off-grid living in my truck camper or more recently car camping out of my Subaru Outback. But it's the end of May, which means it's finally time for the majority of us to get out and start camping and backpacking. And today I am stoked to be using my all-new Bluei Elite 200 V2 to try something I've never done before, and that's make my own backpacking meals. So let's go head over onto the kitchen and make my very first backpacking dehydrated meal using the Bluei Elite 200 V2. All right, today we're making a mushroom risotto, for which you'll need 1 small onion, 1 medium zucchini, a handful, 6 to 8 cremini mushrooms, a bag of green peas, Parmesan, which will be added later, arborio rice as the base, salt, a bottle of white wine, I just grabbed a cheap one, and some high quality olive oil. I've been wanting to make my own backcountry dehydrated meals for a long time now, but the process was always so intimidating that I never knew where to start. I found this recipe online, and I'll go ahead and link that in the description down below so you don't have to rely on my measurements alone. With everything chopped, I went ahead and added it to the pan, cooked it like a normal risotto, and then got to laying out all of my vegetables, which were going to be dehydrated separately from the risotto itself. With all the veggies laid out and the risotto cooled, I went ahead and added it to a mesh sheet, which prevented anything from falling through, and I set the timer. This machine does pull 900 watts consistently, which is definitely higher than most of my loads, but I'm confident that the Bluei can handle it. All right, it has been just under 1 hour, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a peek. It's gonna take a few more, I know, but I wanna see how the Bluei is keeping up with the dehydrator and make sure that the food's doing okay, since this is my first time. Now, obviously, the dehydrator will need much longer than this, but it is great to see all the veggies drying out as they should and the Bluei discharging just as expected. But while this does its thing, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about specs of the Elite 200 V2, which has been more than enough to power my adventures both on and off grid, regardless of the situation or circumstance, thanks to its AC/DC power, 9 outlets, and 3 ways to recharge. All right, it's been about 3 hours since I turned the dehydrator on, so let's go ahead and check. The Bluei is now dead, but it did run for longer than expected, and I'm gonna attribute that to the dehydrator not pulling exactly a consistent 900 watts, but it definitely did its job. All right, so obviously this was a fun experiment, but maybe not the most practical for something that needs to run at 900 watts for 4 to 6 or 10 hours. Thankfully, it worked great for testing purposes and to demonstrate the lifting power of the Elite 200 V2 with a much higher load than I normally put on it using things like my Starlink fridge, camera, and phone at camp. But that just goes to show that the Bluei Elite 200 V2 and all of their other power stations have so many uses. So regardless of your situation, whether you're looking for backup power or extra power for your van or truck camper, you're an RVer who wants a backup or a quiet method of not having to use your generator at night for power, you want backup power for your home, or you are fully off-grid and maybe you have a dehydrator running outside with multiple solar panels, I personally think that the Elite 200 V2, especially when paired with their PV systems and Charger 1 system, are a match made in heaven. So whether you're like me and making some backpacking meals for the summer, looking for some backup power for your home, RV, van, camper, or car camping setup, head down to the link in the description down below to check out the Bluei Elite 200 V2, their Charger 1, and their PV systems to power your next off-grid adventure. And thank you again to Bluei for partnering on today's video. All right, food adventure aside, the last things in my scented bag. This did not need to go in there, but there's my lighter. It typically goes on that outside pouch as well, but I guess it got mixed in after breakfast on my last day. Toothbrush and toothpaste. I'm probably just being a stickler about this, but I do keep all of my scented items, including toiletries like minty toothpaste, in my animal pack because I don't want an animal mistaking this minty toothpaste for like gum or candy and breaking into my tent at night for it. Okay, we're making good progress, guys. Oh, and thank goodness, because my butt is hurting. All right, pack liner. So this liner up top holds everything that I might need throughout the day, but probably won't. That includes, sorry for the crunchiness. I can't even imagine how loud this is. My down jacket, which I did only end up using at night, pretty typical for me, but I make sure that all of my down items do go into a waterproof bag in case it rains. My nighttime thermals, which again, don't usually use during the day, but I always bring a set of pants and a long top. And I try to go a little bit warmer than I need to because I'd rather have clothes prepared for any weather and then just like take off my sleeping bag or like hang an arm or a leg out if I get too warm. In addition to those thermals, I will typically bring an extra pair of sleep socks. Since this was just one night and I knew it was going to be dry, I didn't feel the need to, but I will say that that was greatly supported by my choice of sandals at night. If I kept my feet in my shoes until I got into bed, they would probably still be holding some like human moisture, like sweat from the day. But because they were actually in my sandal, in my socks dried out really nicely. They are wool, obviously, so keep that in mind. But my socks dried out really nicely and I was able to use them easily as my sleep sock. I also have a headlamp, which feels kind of silly considering how early I went to bed. But even if you tend to go to bed early, like me, having a headlamp is really helpful because if for some reason I needed to get out in the middle of the night, if I needed to go to the bathroom, walk back to the car, that would have sucked. But at least I would have had a headlamp so that way I could see and could safely get myself out. Even if I didn't use it at all, it is weight well wasted, I guess. Cords. I really screwed up on this trip. And I did bring 2 cords because on my last trip I only brought 1. I brought 2, but I brought the wrong cord for my camera. So I got lucky and my camera did not run out of battery. My phone was able to be recharged and I learned a valuable lesson. Double check your cords and the charging type of your charger when you're out there. Which, speaking of, the battery pack that I've been using for years, but this might be one of its last trips, is a Goal Zero Flip 36. Now, I liked this because it was really small. It's fairly lightweight. I mean, it's not the lightest thing ever, but it has enough power to charge my phone over the course of 4 or 5 days and or my camera twice and my phone twice, which is plenty of power for me usually between towns. I definitely am thinking about upgrading so that way I can have 2 ports because something that's kind of annoying for me as an early to bed person when I'm on the trail is only being able to charge one thing at a time. So a lot of times I'll plug in my phone as soon as I get to camp, get that juiced up. Usually it ends up charging fully by 8 or 9 p.m. and I'm already asleep. So I'll have to set an alarm to wake up to charge my camera or any other electronic devices at night, which is fine. It's just not ideal. And I would love to get something a little bit lighter, a little bit more compact, a little thinner, and with more charging capabilities. The last thing in this bag is a book. I feel silly for bringing this. I never read on trips. If I do, it'll be on my phone, like on a Kindle version. But I thought, you know what? It's an early season trip. I'm not gonna be that gassed. I'll get to camp, I'll read a book. I think I read 4 or 5 pages before falling asleep. So it was definitely wasted weight, but I guess most people bring books on trips. So if you do, make sure it's something that you're actually going to read. All right, we are getting down to the end here. I think this is the last bag. Oh. Last of what we got. Hopefully the last time I'll have to rearrange myself. Last bag. This just came out of the bottom of my pack. And this is how I recommend everyone pack their bags, with this stuff on the bottom. Not only because of the weight distribution throughout your pack and how you carry, but also because you don't really use this stuff until you get to camp. So having it on the bottom means that everything else is a little bit easier to access and I guess just like more organized. First up, we have the Sea to Summit Eros pillow. This looks new because it is, which is very sad because I actually have had the Eros pillow, their Ultralight ultra compact, it fits in the palm of my hand pillow for probably 4 or 5 years now, at least, if not longer actually. And somehow in my move in January, I misplaced it. So I'm really hoping that it is still somewhere upstairs. I've gone through everything like 4 times and finally gave in, because this truly makes all the difference in how well I sleep on trail. And when I'm pushing bigger days, that really means a lot to me. So if you value your sleep, if you like a real feeling pillow, this has a felted side, which I really love, and you'll see it in my next video as well to get a better sense for what it actually feels like. You can adjust how much it's inflated. I always go on the softer side, so it like cradles my head instead of feeling like I'm rolling off of an inflated pillow. And yeah, it just really improves my quality of sleep. Highly recommend. All right, next is my Nemo Tensor. Another product that I really, really love. This is the insulated regular version, so I use it for 4-season camping. I've had it in the snow, the summer, year-round, in my car, in a tent. You get the point. I love this thing, and I will say, unfortunately, I think it may have come to the end of its days. And it's not that there's a hole that I can find and patch, unfortunately, though she does have like 4 patches on her now. But there's just some sort of micro leak in it that I cannot find. It might be in the valve, but unfortunately, I think 4 years is well past its warranty date. So I will likely be replacing my Nemo Tensor Insulated with another Nemo Tensor Insulated, because I just love this thing so much. They make an extreme weather version too, which I might consider if I do some more extreme winter camping next winter in Colorado, but I find that this is great even down into like the tens. Maybe single digits, haven't tried it. Might be a little cold then because I use a quilt, so I don't have down behind me. But yeah, highly, highly recommend. Super compact, super lightweight, fits perfectly in my tiny little pack. Last but not least, this is yet another heavily loved, used, duct taped, patched item that I have had for going on 5 years now. This is the REI Magma 30 Trail Quilt. I, in hindsight, probably should have gotten something in the 10 or 20 degree range, and if I upgraded, that's really all that I would do. But in terms of durability, comfort, packability, and weight, I think this is like the best bang for the buck. And I believe right now REI is having their anniversary sale. So if you're looking to get this or something like this, this would be a great time to do it. But it's been a great trail companion. It's lost a lot of down over the years. I've patched many holes, not due to the quality of the bag, but due to how rough I am on my gear. And she's held up great. But there's no down left in this. So I will likely be replacing it. And I will be getting another quilt. I know that a lot of people like bags, and if you're someone who runs really, really, really cold, maybe there's a justification for that, but they make quilts now that go down to 0 and even negative temperatures. They have different closures on the back. They might need to be paired with a slightly different sleeping pad. But after I used a quilt the first time on the Colorado Trail, I decided that I would never go back. So I will likely be retiring this or making this like a very hot summer bag, but I would buy it again in a heartbeat, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for, again, a very affordable quilt like I was a few years ago. This, I think, was $180. So as far as quilts go, as far as 30 degree, very, very packable. I mean, this thing is just so tiny, and it does come with a compression sack, but I usually just stuff it in there because that's all the compression that it needs anyways. All right, well, that I think just about does it. That is everything that I packed on my one night early season Colorado first backpacking trip of the season trip. I don't have any regrets that I can think of. I did forget chapstick and our Aquaphor. My lips are still recovering from that. I did bring the wrong cord for my camera, but hot tip, if you're worried your electronics are gonna die and you can remove the battery, I actually took the battery out of my camera and put it in my sleeping bag with my body heat and my clothes, and it maintained the battery perfectly. And as far as food goes, this is really the only thing left. All right, well, that could have been really sad. Okay, but now this is the really cool and fun part. This is how I ruined Pop-Tarts for myself.